Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Basis Points, where we dive deep into the numbers and the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. The headlines. Japanese investment bank Nomura says there's only a very slim chance that the Philippine Central Bank will go for a big rate cut at tomorrow's policy meeting. Credit ratings agency Fitch warns of the serious impacts a second Donald Trump presidency could have on Asia-Pacific markets. AI heavyweight Nvidia is on the brink of dethroning Apple as the world's most valuable company. And a trio wins this year's Nobel Prize in Economics for their research on global inequality. First, the financial markets. U.S. stocks continue their strong performance, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 hitting new all-time highs, led by a rally in tech shares. The Dow Jones rose 0.5%, crossing the 4,300 level for the first time. The S&P 500 climbed 0.8%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained nearly 1%. Investors are now focusing on earnings season, hoping it will support bets that the U.S. economy can avoid a recession.
Investors have been and continue to be quite optimistic. It's maybe still some overhang from the Fed cutting rates, and the inflation numbers have been pretty good. The employment numbers have been good. It looks perhaps like a Goldilocks kind of economy. We're starting to see earnings come out, and I think that it's very, very early, so it's really too early to make any conclusions. But few earnings reports we've seen have been pretty good and better than expected. And so I think all of that is driving optimism.
Over in Europe, markets are at a two-week high, with attention shifting to corporate earnings and the European Central Bank's policy meeting this week. The UK's FTSE 100 advanced by 0.5%, Germany's DAX gained 0.7%, and France's CAC 40 rose 0.3%. Here in Asia, main indices are trading higher following Wall Street's gains. Japan's Nikkei 225 is up over 1%. South Korea's Kospi is higher by 0.2%. Meantime, Australia's ASX 200 is up by 0.7%. In the commodities market, oil prices are sliding on concerns over weakening demand due to slow economic growth in China. Brent crude is now down 2%, now trading at around $77 a barrel. Meanwhile, gold is pulling back from a one-week high under pressure from a strong U.S. dollar. Japanese investment bank Nomura sees only a 15% chance that the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas will make a big 50 basis point rate cut at tomorrow's policy-setting meeting. Nomura says that there's an 80% chance of a smaller 25 basis point cut. They expect the central bank to stay focused on keeping inflation in check, using the latest inflation data to guide their decision. Nomura also says that the BSP knows that ongoing geopolitical issues could push oil prices higher, which could impact inflation. They add that among 9 Asian economies, the Philippines is the least connected to China due to weak trade and investment ties. As a result, China's recent economic stimulus has little impact on the Philippine economy. Now, 3 powerhouse groups team up for a major partnership to improve travel to southern Luzon. Ramon Ang's San Miguel, together with the Nobel and Campos families, are working on the Ayala Interchange project in Calamba. This project will link the South Luzon Expressway, or SLEX, to local roads in Laguna and Batangas. The goal is to make it easier to access both SLEX and the Star tollways, reduce traffic congestion, and cut travel time between Santo Tomas, Batangas, and Lucena from 3 hours to just 45 minutes. Construction for this project begins next month. The Philippines strengthens its energy partnership with Saudi Arabia. Energy officials are on a 2-day mission in the Middle East, where both countries have signed a memorandum of understanding, laying the groundwork for cooperation in areas like renewable energy and natural gas. This follows President Bongbong Marcos's attendance at the first ASEAN Gulf Cooperation Council Summit in Saudi Arabia last year. During the summit, Saudi state-owned companies expressed interest in investing in the Philippine energy sector. This comes as Saudi Arabia supplied nearly half of the Philippines' crude oil imports in the first half of 2023, making it a critical partner in securing the country's energy supply. In other news, credit ratings agency Fitch warns that a second Donald Trump presidency could create headwinds for Asia-Pacific markets. Fitch expects tougher credit conditions in the region due to heightened trade protectionism, slower economic growth, and increased geopolitical tensions. The agency says that the GDP of countries like China, South Korea, and Vietnam could shrink by 1%. A Trump win in the United States election this November could mean a significant shift in policy, while a win by Vice President Kamala Harris would likely maintain the continuity of President Joe Biden's current approach. Still in the United States elections, Vice President Kamala Harris unveils new proposals to boost economic opportunities for Black men. The plan includes fully forgivable loans of up to $20,000 for entrepreneurs in underserved communities. She also plans to expand apprenticeship programs and launch a health initiative focused on Black men. Harris announced these proposals during a visit to Erie, Pennsylvania, where she stopped by a Black-owned coffee shop. Recent polls show that 7 in 10 Black voters favor Harris over Trump. In other news, a trio wins this year's Nobel Prize in Economics for their research on the aftermath of colonization and its role in global inequality. Darren Acemoglu, Simon Johnson, and James Robinson were honored for showing how societies with weak rule of law and exploitative institutions fail to drive growth or improve conditions for their people. The winners stressed the need to understand local contexts and aspirations in addressing these issues.
I'm not someone who thinks that economists have a kind of cure for everything, or they have some silver bullet, or, you know, we just bring some evidence to the table and everyone is going to wake up, you know. And my experience working in, you know, developing countries and in the global south is that people are usually much more aware of the problems than Western academics are, you know. And so their problem is, you know, how to cooperate, how to kind of find a way of collaborating and trying to change their own societies, how to build a project to build a different Nigeria or a different Colombia. And so I think maybe ideas are important in terms of giving people levers or giving people ways to think about the problems in their society.
This prize in economics is the final Nobel to be awarded this year. Unlike the prizes in physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and peace, the economics Nobel wasn't established by Alfred Nobel himself. It was instead created in 1968 by Sweden's central bank. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back to Basis Points. Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened just a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at the initial figures. Now, after rebounding yesterday, albeit marginally by just 0.2%, the market is well entrenched in the green, up by a 0.9% to 73.90, tracking the gains in Wall Street overnight. Investors are also, anticipating a rate cut by the central bank tomorrow. So that's boosting market sentiment right now. As for the all shares index, it's up by 0.6% to 40.47. All the other subsectors, it's a sea of green, led by, of course, interest rate sensitive financial counter. That's up by 1.4%. All the other subsectors are also well entrenched in the green. Now, taking a look at the foreign exchange market, the peso opens little change from its previous close of 57.47, opening at 57.46 against the greenback. Now, joining us this morning to talk about the financial markets and more is the head of research of First Metro Investment, Christina Ulang. Good morning, Christina. Thanks for being here with us.
Good morning, Maiki. Happy to be here.
Okay, Christina, all eyes are on the BSP. They're going to be meeting tomorrow. Their policy setting meeting, anticipations. You know, people are expecting a rate cut. But by how much, that's the question. Nomura Securities, we have this story that Nomura Bank says there's only a very slim chance that the Philippine Central Bank will go for a supersized 50 basis point cut. What do you think?
Agree. Because there's so much a lot of uncertainties right now. We are on the eve of the Israeli retaliation versus Iran, and so we don't know how big is this war going to get, and if the U.S. is going to be involved in a much bigger way. So a lot of escalation risk, and therefore the BSP would want to be careful, cautious, and just doing baby steps of like 25 basis point cut this month, and then next month probably. Best to be on the safer side because the fallout on the currency might be big, and we are on the path of depreciation. The currency is just at 57.50 on the weaker side. And I think the difference between now and August rate cutting is the currency. In August, we've seen strong currency like coming down from 57 to 56, 55, 90. Now we're seeing the reverse. And so I think the BSP would want to be careful. Just do a 25 basis point cut.
Okay, we're going to take a quick breather just to fix an audio issue. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Basis Points. Still with us is the head of research of First Metro Investment, Christina Ulang. Hi, Christina.
Hello. Hi, good morning. Good morning, Maiki.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
Okay, Christina, we were talking about interest rates. The BSP's rate-setting meeting, policy managers meet tomorrow to talk about interest rates. What do you think they're going to do tomorrow?
I think the BSP is going to be very careful, cautious on the eve of these increased geopolitical tension that we're seeing in the Middle East. The Israelis are ready to retaliate versus Iran, and so there's a lot of uncertainty, and the currency is weakening. We've seen it rise to like 57.50, coming from like as low as 55.90. So I think if they're going to cut aggressively, like 50 basis points, then it's not going to be in favor of the currency. That's going to help reinforce the current weakness. I think the difference between now and the August rate cutting is that in August, the currency was very strong. We were coming from like 55.9. The currency was like 56.50, and it was strong, getting strong. But now we're seeing weakening. So I think the BSP is going to favor a smaller cut, be more conservative given the geopolitical tension abroad.
Yeah, the geopolitical tensions, that's a black swan event. Nothing we can do about that. But in any case, within the monetary board of the BSP, there are kind of like mixed expectations or mixed views to the rate cut. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto, who sits on the BSP's monetary board, is in favor of a supersized 50 basis point cut to match that of the Federal Reserves. Now, the BSP governor, Eli Romolona, is in favor of baby steps. He is in the view of a more conservative 25 basis point cut would be appropriate at this time. What are the reasons for their differing opinions on this matter, Christina? What would you say they would be?
Yeah, I think Dr. Remolona would want to see more information at third quarter GDP. How is it doing? Will it be slower than the second quarter? And of course, consumer spending. He was concerned about the consumer spending. It is looking like at a crisis low of like 4.6%. Our historical average was like 5% or above 5%, even 6%. But because inflation was coming off from a high base, and monetary tightening was there previously, and so our consumption has shrunk like slower to 4.6%. I think that is top of his mind. And then inflation, given that inflation is already slowed, still he would want to see consumption grow. But given the currency volatility now, maybe it's not the time to do aggressive action on the policy front. But Secretary Recto is aiming for lower cost of borrowing because he has to borrow next year to fund a record high budget of like 6.3 trillion. So he's going to be borrowing around 2 trillion on gross basis. And he would want the cost of borrowing to be lower. He's also concerned, same as Dr. Remolona, about the growth prospects. So he wants to be more aggressive to spur growth next year. So I think these are the overall concerns of the two sides of the debate.
In any case, interest rates are headed lower. It's just a matter of by how much. Let's talk conservatively. A 25 basis point reduction would lower the benchmark interest rate to 6%, and banks use this as a reference for loan interest rates. How do you think this would affect corporate earnings and the Philippine Stock Exchange?
Oh, favorably, because the cost of borrowing and the tightness in credit conditions is going to be eased. There's going to be greater ease in when it comes to funding your needs, lower interest burden on the part of clients and corporations. So I think it's going to be putting them on the growth path, more confident when it comes to funding their capital expenditure. So it's all positive for the growth prospects of the country and corporate sectors, and that's going to be good for sentiment. And investors, I think, is going to be looking after the third quarter corporate earnings and the third quarter GDP growth. Those two are going to be crucial to the sustainability of the current rally in the stock market. We say peak above 7,000.
Where do you think this is going to take the PSE index, Christina?
Our original forecast as early as this year was like 7,000 to 7,500, and that was already hit. And I think investors are looking for more catalysts in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter. And that's going to come from the direction of our currency. Are we going to see greater currency volatility or greater strength? So if the corporate earnings also are going to be like more than 13%, beating expectation, that's going to be good for the PSE also sustain the rally. We are in a bull run territory. We're just seeing some corrective action now, but we're there, 7,000 to 7,500. Maybe better than 7,500 by year, and if and when the third quarter GDP and corporate earnings turn out better than expected, like maybe around 6% and corporate earnings 13%, and even beating expectation.
Okay, thank you, Christina, for your time this morning. Unfortunately, that's all the allotment we have for this segment. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was Christina Ulang, the research head of First Metro Investment. Now, let's take a look at today's biggest local corporate stories. Philippine Bank of Communications, owned by billionaire Lucio Ko, kicks off the offer period for its first peso-denominated bond issuance. PBCom aims to raise at least 2 billion pesos to refinance debt, diversify funding sources, and support loan growth. Now, billionaire up next. Billionaire Isidro Consunji's Semirara Mining plans to invest nearly 300 billion pesos to expand its mining operations. As the country's largest coal producer, Semirara submits a 5-year plan to the Environment Department covering capital expenditures, production costs, and operating expenses. Next, Meralco, led by billionaire Manuel Pangilinan. He's partnering with South Korea's Samsung C&T Corporation Engineering and Construction to explore nuclear energy for the Philippines. They signed a memorandum of understanding to explore design, regulatory frameworks, and infrastructure for nuclear power plants. Now, another Pangilinan-led company, PLDT's Vitro, forms a strategic partnership with Hong Kong-based HGC Global Communications. This collaboration aims to boost data center connectivity in the Philippines to meet the growing demand for stronger digital infrastructure. Finally, tech giant GCash expands its partnership with Alipay Plus to improve the cashless experience for Filipino travelers in over 45 countries. Now, in other news, the shares of AI giant Nvidia hit a record high as the company nears overtaking Apple as the world's most valuable company. Nvidia is now valued at $3.39 trillion after its stock jumped 2.4% to about $138. This puts it just below Apple's $5.52 trillion valuation and above Microsoft's $3.12 trillion valuation. Nvidia has become Wall Street's leader in the race to dominate the fast-growing AI technology sector. The company is up 14% this month, bouncing back from last month's sell-off caused by concerns over product delays and some long-term growth prospects. And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. We'll be back tomorrow for more news on the financial markets and more. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel, always on top.